Well, hello, everybody, and welcome. We're going to get started here with our December slideshow here for the Wisconsin chapter of the National Railway Historical Society. And first of all, I'm going to thank everybody for being here tonight. Looks like at the moment, we have 62 people in the room that may pop up. Two more are coming in as we speak. But we're going to get started here. Just give you a little rundown on what's going to happen here. We've got 5 presenters on the docket here tonight. Mark Lynn will be doing his program of Santa Fe from the years 1968 through the early 2000s. Matt Brzezowski spent a week in Colorado and almost exclusively on the old Rio Grande, narrow and standard gauge. So he's going to share his photography of that trip this past summer. Brian Heckel will be in the house shortly, and his presentation will be on 20 years of digital photography. Bon French is here in the room with us tonight, and he'll be sharing a program on Dick Newmiller's photography from Rochelle, Illinois, from a day or so in the 1950s. And then Mike Uhas, that's me, I'll be sharing a program on some photos I took 30 years ago. So just to give you a little update of what's happening with our chapter, our next meetings are Friday, the 7th of January, when Bob Baker will be presenting his Milwaukee Road program. That will be fun. He just recently wrote a book published by Four Ways West Publications, a Milwaukee Road book. And that will be the photos, the Wisconsin photos from that book will be the subject of the January meeting. Then on Friday, the 4th of February, Tom Hoffman will be presenting his program 20 years ago. So he'll be looking back at 2002. And then we'll be doing another one of these online slideshows on the 15th of February. It's a Tuesday. So we hope you could join us for that as well. And we will be looking for some presenters, some folks that want to do 15-minute programs. If you're interested, contact me. That would be great. If you are not yet a member of the Wisconsin chapter of the National Railway Historical Society, now would be a great time to open up a browser window, go to www.nrhswis.org and click the join/renew button and pay $21 online, and boom, then you're a supporter. And we really appreciate that. Or if you don't want to do the thing online, just send us a check, $20 to Wisconsin NRHS, PO Box 070758. Milwaukee, Wisconsin 53207. So once again, the order of the shows here today are Mark Lynn with his Santa Fe program, Matt Brzezowski's Week on the Rio Grande, Brian Heckel's look at 20 years of digital photography, Bon French in Rochelle, and then Mike Uhas with 1991. And again, thank you all for being here tonight. This is just a kind of a fun way to get folks to stay connected during the pandemic times. And this is the longest night of the year. So I'm looking out my window and it's dark out there. So what better way to do? What better event than doing an evening in front of your computer with some pictures. So let me shout out to Mark Lynn. Mark, are you about ready to go? Can I give you an introduction yet?
That work?
Yep, I can hear you now. Yeah, excellent. Okay.
And it just becomes a tradition again.
Well, perhaps it will. Maybe we don't have a backyard like we did at the other place, but the big issue is parking here in Trempealeau. So right. I see my neighbor Dave Berman is online with us. Maybe we could park in his backyard and in his parking lot up at his place, and then have a shuttle.
There you go.
There we go. All right, so after Mark graduated from the University of Illinois in 1979 with a degree in civil engineering, he joined Santa Fe's engineering department in Fort Madison, Iowa. After nearly 40 years in railroading with Santa Fe, Amtrak, CSX, GE, and Canadian Pacific in both management and union positions, he retired at 0001 on his 60th birthday and has not looked back. Mark says retirement is far and away the best job I've ever had. He still gets out to shoot, but not quite as often as he used to back in the day, as he finds today's Class 1 activities mostly really boring, with filthy GEVOs dominating the scene and few Class 1 branch line operations remaining. The short lines are still fun, he says, but with so many being orange borged, he says these options are dwindling as well. Mark reminisces, it's hard to believe that the 80s and 90s are viewed by many as the good old days, but it sure was an interesting time to be shooting. Mark lives in the Twin Cities. He has an aversion to flying monkeys, which is probably the reason why he claims to have never watched The Wizard of Oz. So, ladies and gentlemen, would we please give a warm welcome to Mark Lynn. Mark?
I started taking slides in 1968 as a 7th grader, but I really didn't know what I was doing. And the shots that I took before really 1976 or 77 are questionable at best, but included a few shots of some trains that I saw but didn't get to shoot because I was too little. But anyway, here we go. This was about 2 weeks before I took my first slides, the nearest we can tell, because my first slides had an April processing date on April of '68. And I missed the PAs by about that because my first slides are all F units. Not that I'm complaining, but a little bit. Also, these were brand new right when I started taking pictures. Never really got any good shots of these guys in service. And then Super C was a fixture on the Illinois division in daylight hours. It got out of Chicago usually about 9:15 in the morning, between 9 and 9:15, and just about set your watch on it coming through Coal City about 10:30. This is a little farther on down the line at Galesburg with pretty interesting consist than the typical short train. This is one of my first presentable shots that I took myself. Super C again, it was a favorite train of mine. I used to put some pretty good looking consists on these things. Hard to beat 3 cowls. This is my hometown, Coal City. On the left over here is the operator, Jim Frizzell. And for those of you who are classic country and Western music fans, yes, his name was Lefty, or his nickname was Lefty. This is my mom's 1970 Torino, which was one of the fastest cars in town, and she still doesn't know that. And incidentally, to U28CGs and a U33C. And every now and then they'd put 4 of them on a train. This is just before the high-speed SD45-2s got delivered. Snowy day, just before Christmas probably. 4 of them again, at least one of them still in the red and silver. This signal bridge is the home signal to Pico interlocking, which is where the Santa Fe and former GM&O main lines became joint main lines between there and Plains at the southwest side of Joliet. And it was Rule 251 territory, meaning current of traffic. And BNSF later bought the northbound track from ICG, or I guess it was UP by that time, and CTC'd it. Late in the day, this would be train number 15, the Lone Star, or Texas Chief, whatever they called it in early Amtrak days. These trains continued to run with leased Santa Fe F units, and some of them got the yellow bonnet paint scheme. This is a pretty unusual shot in that the eastbound Super C, which is the train with the caboose, usually went through town in the middle of the night. We never saw it. I was out at Pico just to shoot the westbound and happened to catch a meet, and both trains here are moving. The westbound is moving at least 70, and the guy on the right is doing 30, which was the speed through the crossovers there. Again, relating back to the Rule 251 territory, the ICG at this time was running a tie gang between Pico and Plains. So the Santa Fe had to run all their eastbounds on the westbound track, which required them to pick up train orders to do so. The railroad, this was a little temporary operator shack, and this is Frizzell again, that's the signal maintainer. And he was working out there for about a month while this tie gang was going on, handing up orders. It was pretty interesting. Later on, after I went to work for Santa Fe, one of my first assignments was keeping tabs on the contractor that was tearing up the St. Joe sub between Bee Creek Junction and Plattsburgh, Missouri. And this is the last revenue train on the Plattsburgh to Henrietta portion. Getting ready to leave Plattsburgh, you can see several carloads of ties from the scrapping process. The local newspaper reporter, and I think the mayor and the train master was out there. It was kind of a thing. Later on, my first year with Santa Fe, this is just the west end of Fort Madison. Kind of shows a typical signal arrangement you would find on Santa Fe, a cantilever and a wayside signal. Nothing nicer looking than a nice fresh set of units. This is the long distance local that ran between Kansas City and Fort Madison. And he's just about to Marceline. He's at milepost 352. Marceline, I think, was 350, something like that, from Chicago. This guy is getting a roll westbound out of Fort Madison. This was a pretty regular morning train. Lots of auto parts cars, although no high cubes. They're all 50 and 60 footers. Came off Conrail Streeter and headed for Kansas City. This is a 168 train, Chicago, Los Angeles, coming up the hill out of the Mississippi River Valley at New Boston, Iowa, going onto the Highway 218 overpass. SD 45 on the point, notch 8. Doesn't get much better. The 330 CGs, this is half of the fleet. There are only 6 of them built. This is July 10th, 12th, something like that in 1980. They were retired by the end of the month. So I think this may have been their last run where they got gathered up and sent to Corvette. If it's not their last trip, it's very close to it. The bridge is just reopened after a boat has gone through. You can see another train up here in the upper left on the move also. We were doing a redecking project on the highway portion of the bridge, and I was the concrete inspector on it. So I saw these two trains sitting down there waiting for the bridge and went back to my truck and grabbed the camera, so I was in position. Glad I did. I was riding this train on the left. I think I was coming back from Kansas City after riding a rail train down there, something like that. They held us out of La Plata for some traffic to cross over in front of us, and I just hopped off and got down in the weeds for a shot. Just too nice of a day and too pretty a power not to. It's from the overpass at Ethel, Missouri. Nice clean leader, but the other three units are the rare GP40Xs, so kind of a bittersweet thing there, catching 340Xs on a train, but the cleanest unit consists is leading, which is very unusual, as most of us know. Again, the clean unit on the point. This is that auto parts train again, coming out of the CTC siding at the west end of Fort Madison. Every May, the Santa Fe used to run a business train with 3 freshly scrubbed FP45s and a really good looking train. We were surveying this curve that the train is on, and we had to clear for the train. So I just walked a little bit farther up the hillside. This is climbing up to the Missouri River Bridge at Sibley, a small town about 20 miles east of Kansas City. We're doing an undercutting project. You can see the fresh ballast. It hasn't even been regulated or groomed yet. This track here is the lead to a power plant that sat underneath basically the Missouri River Bridge. Missouri Pacific would bring coal up, and they would enter the plant on this track, and then there's a loop behind us and down almost to river level, and then they would come back out of the loop on this track and go back towards Kansas City and get on their own railroad. Another GP40X leading here. I later got transferred to Fort Worth, and not long after I moved down there, I was up in the Arbuckle Mountains in Oklahoma, and thought it would be a really good idea to climb up on the edge of this cliff and take a picture. And the picture was nice. Thank God now for drones, but that was a pretty steep drop. I wouldn't even think about it today. Later that year, on the Lampasas sub, 6 rebuilt Jeeps. Santa Fe called them Rattlers, and this is rattlesnake country, so it's kind of appropriate. Coming up a pretty good hill. The Lampasas and Slayton subs are both kind of hilly. Vacation to California. One afternoon we got sun. That was about it. And Southern California later that week. The 9510 was the first of the SF-30Cs, which were being rebuilt in the Cleveland shops to get the red paint before the failed Southern Pacific Santa Fe merger. This is a Galveston grain train. There's the class engine of the SF-30Cs. East of Flagstaff, back when you could still drive the access roads. Haslett, Texas, which at the time was a sleepy little town north of Fort Worth. Now it's bustling part of the Metroplex after the Ross Perot Alliance Airport got built, and the Santa Fe built a big new yard there that does a lot of intermodal business. The place is totally built up. It's totally unrecognizable from what it used to be. FedEx has a hub there. UPS has a hub there. Amazon has a hub there. Back up in the mountains, we're got a rail train, and the engineer was having problems with the train on the hills. So we called the Power Bureau and said, hey, we need another 4-axle at Doherty in the morning. Yeah, okay, no problem. So we get there in the morning, and what did they drop off? They dropped off a third red GP20. So I got to say, we probably had one of the best looking rail trains on the railroad for a few days there. Doherty is also the location of a ballast pit back here around the curve. You can see some ballast cars lined up here ready for loading. Getting ready to start a tie gang early in the morning, frosty, North Texas. Back when Santa Fe could put together some pretty interesting power contests. It's an empty grain train going north. Of course, in 1989, Mike Haverty brought back the war bonnets. The internal rail fan grapevine on Santa Fe was just going completely crazy. This is the first run of this particular engine on a California to Dallas train. Pretty unusual to get war bonnets and reds and blues all together in the same contest, because Santa Fe was pretty active repainting the reds, and for quite some time there was only the 8 FP45s on the roster, so it was a little unusual to catch a set that looked like that. Another vacation out to Flagstaff. GP60 leading this time. Whoops. This is looking the other direction from that morning shot with the red SD45-2, standing in just about the same spot, just looking the other way. Curtis Hill, Oklahoma, when it was still single track. This curve here happens to be the longest curve on the Santa Fe. It's almost 2 miles long and covers over 100 degrees in curvature. Between it was between the sidings of Heman and Belva. Of course, it's all double track now, and the hill I'm standing on has been removed to build up the fill for the second track out here. So the perspective has totally changed. Just getting ready to go over the first bridge in Abel Canyon, about 20 miles east of Belen, New Mexico, climbing out of the Rio Grande River Valley. Back in the Midwest in Edelstein, I was home for Thanksgiving or something, and I think I went back to Illinois for a ball game or something, and stopped by Edelstein on the way back and just stumbled on the guy. This is north of Haslett. All this area in the background is now built up light industry and more residential, and it's just incredible. The urban sprawl is unbelievable. For a while, Santa Fe was running their intermodal trains from Texas to the West Coast using the UP's Baird sub. They used to go down the Dublin sub, but it was a slow piece of railroad. Didn't have CTC, fairly short sidings, long distances between sidings. It really wasn't made for intermodal traffic. So Santa Fe got some trackage rights over the UP's Baird sub, and they would go out to Sweetwater, where they would join the Santa Fe and then go up to Amarillo to get on the main line and go west. Now they, after the merger, they built a connection where they can use the old Fort Worth and Denver and take it up to Amarillo. Downtown Fort Worth, the buildings with the red lights on the background, in the background, one of those is the BN headquarters, but I forget which one it is. I think it's the one on the left with the two red lights. This guy is just waiting for the signal to go through Tower 55. It's on the Dallas district. This is owned and operated by KCS now. This is at a little town called Cowley, which is about halfway between Louisville and Dallas. Of course, it's all built up now too. Took the long way home from a Santa Fe Modelers Organization convention in Wichita. Drove about 2 hours the wrong direction to spend the morning up at Matfield Green before driving back to Dallas, and it was worth it. Matfield Green is always a cool place to shoot. The most bloodthirsty chiggers on the planet live in Matfield Green, so you want to take your strongest insect repellent and hope that they don't like it. They're nasty. Couple of nice clean units. The track in the background here is the lead to the new Alliance Yard. I was the roadmaster here when all this stuff was getting built. It was a really busy time. And I just looked at Google Maps to see what this scene looks like now. It appears that this plowed area here is the only area that is not houses. Other than that, it's houses as far as you can see looking in this direction now. Back when Santa Fe ran freight trains over Raton, this was the La Junta to Albuquerque train. Had 3 more in the middle, all of them nice and shiny clean. It was quite a sight that morning after driving all night to get there. This is looking the other way on that longest curve on the system. This isn't one train here. He had just met an eastbound. That's the siding of Heman back there. And so this is a westbound about, I suppose, 9:30, 10 in the morning, running south-southwest here. Unusual landscape in that part of Oklahoma and all that red dirt. It's a pretty neat place. Later on the same day, first trip. This is the old main line, which the Santa Fe had turned into a siding. It used to wind through this hill back here. Now the double track just goes straight around this curve here. Overpass at Darling, Arizona. Still a great spot even after they flattened out the curve a little bit. The background is just amazing. Pretty cool. Same area. East of Flagstaff. Back to the bridge. Got some rain that morning. Wasn't much moving, so you do what you can. Boy, that railroad used to look good, man. One of the first trips for this engine, they less than stellar reliability, so you didn't get to see them pulling JB Hunt containers for very long. They were relegated to secondary trains and coal trains fairly quickly. And the last pure Santa Fe engine I shot was 6 years after the merger. very late in the day at a place called Lubbock, California. And that's the end of my Santa Fe journey for now. So I hope you liked it. If you didn't like it, blame you, Haas. And thanks for watching, everybody, and everybody have good holidays.
Good stuff.
Thank you.
Thank
Great
you,
show.
thank you, Mark. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. Round of applause for Mark Lynn, everybody. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Mark before we moved on to the next presenter?
Thank you very much for an excellent presentation. Being in Virginia, I don't get to see Santa Fe very often.
Oh, well,
Is there any company that has a more attractive paint scheme than the red bonnet, blue bonnet?
awful hard to beat, in my opinion. There's a few of them kind of in the same stratosphere, but I think that was probably the best ever.
And what's magnificent is it costs so much. Unlike the cheapskate CSX around where I live, where they just paint everything black. Barbary blue, and the Norfolk Southern, which is mostly black.
Yep.
Thank you again,
Hey,
Mark.
Mark.
Excellent, excellent program.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mark.
We'll do it again sometime.
Was somebody else there?
Thanks, Mark.
Anybody else have anything for Mark before we move on?
I just wanted to ask Mark, when he started his career with the Santa Fe, did he have a choice on what railroad he was going to work at? Did he know it was the Santa Fe, that it was what it was, that it, you know?
Oh yeah, I knew exactly what I used to hang out at the depot in Coal City. The first time I showed up there wearing a hard hat,
Yeah.
the signal maintainer, it blew his mind. He couldn't believe it.
I moved to Kansas City for a job in 1974. I just go out to Argentina and watch the westbounds every night. And I didn't have a camera, didn't know people took pictures, but it was a real treat. I love the Santa Fe, and Kansas seemed to be like the heart of their railroad, you know.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Argentine was, oh, what a place.
Good show. Enjoyed.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Mark. Round of applause for Mark. We're going to move on to our next presenter in our little round robin here thing. Before we do, though, I'll mention here, if you're not yet a member of the Wisconsin chapter of the National Railway Historical Society, real simple to join. Go to our website, www.nrhswis.org, click the join and renew button, and you'll see how easy it is. And I'd like to give a shout out to Dean Savola for joining this evening. Thank you, Dean. You'll get your welcome package here shortly. It's an email, but that's what our package is.